Hi everyone, Ivana Taylor here, your host for BizapaloozaChat, the plugged in edition here on Mondays. And you have heard the song, It's a Small World from Disney, and the world is getting smaller and flatter all the time. And so lately we've been talking about networking globally. Now, I have lots of friends all over the world, but it was never something I did intentionally. But a lot of small business folks will tell you that you are missing out if you are not networking globally. And what better way to do that is through social media. And for that, my friends, we have brought the queen of global networking. Her name is Zala Bricelj. She is from my part of the world out in Slovenia, right?
Exactly.
So welcome, Zala. I am so excited to have you because I know that you are a powerhouse in terms of networking, and you are involved with Twitter Smarter, lots of other chats. Tell me about the different chats you're involved in.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, BizapaloozaChat, for having me today. And thank you so much, Ivana, for the awesome introduction. I am the small queen, very keen to learn from all the awesome people that I've met, collaborating and connecting, especially on social media. And as you've mentioned, I am the community manager working together with Madeline Sklar for Twitter Smarter. Which has been an amazing experience with the most awesome team that I could have imagined, also scattered across the globe. And I'm also co-hosting Biz Heroes every Thursday with my partner in crime, Magda. And on Thursdays, before Twitter Smarter, also Social Powwow with Antsitam. So we're scattered all over the world, but get together on social media.
So tell me a little bit about what you do, what your business is, and kind of how you got into this world of social networking and community management. Is that what I should call it?
Yeah, we can call it like this because it actually is management. We, as you and I, we manage different social media activities for clients, but we're also very active and engaging on social media. So my story actually is I did social and marketing in the corporate environment. And then at a certain point, it was the aha moment that kind of led me into the path of being a solopreneur because I wanted to use my knowledge and my skills and just curiosity I have to offer to different clients and also to different small businesses to start doing social in a way that we'll be discussing today and that I also believe in. So living in a social environment, being social, and that leading to different connections and also business opportunity and also expanding your reach a little bit.
Excellent, excellent. So talk a little bit about the why. What is the why behind all this community management? What is it that you believe in? What is it that you stand for?
Yeah, we hear this why a lot of times, and I think it's actually very important. It is very important to take time for yourself and also discover what is the intent behind of doing something or living something or executing something, and also what is the purpose behind of what you're doing, what you're working with, or what you're working for. Actually, but as far as my memory goes into my childhood years, I've always been very curious and very chatty. One of my teachers once called me, like maybe in a negative sense, "You're a chatterbox," and I was like, "Yes, I am." So bring it on. So it actually means I love being connected to people. I'm curious to learn about their lives, their businesses, what drives them, their motivation, and their little stories. So that's why I call myself, I'm a story gatherer or story catcher, let's say it in a way, because this kind of a, this kind of a creates a relatable connection with somebody that you can take it on a much deeper level than just, being on Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn, but really establishing it long term. So that's my why. I love people, and every day it's like an excitement going online and saying, wow, what's up, what's new with people. I remember small things about people, for example, somebody getting a new job or somebody hopping on their first Twitter chat and just following up, and that is important for me because I also value people who do the same.
So I love this thing that you talked about, story catcher, right? Because that's something else that you do. So we know you from the work that you do with communities, and we're going to talk a whole lot about that. But I'm really, really fascinated by the story catcher phrase that you use, because a lot of, we know story is important. We know that people have stories. And so talk a little bit about what you do in that space.
Yeah. My work is divided into separate parts. So one big part is social media management, also social media strategy. But on the other hand, I'm also a lecturer, presenter, and also a workshop leader. So in the morning, in my time zone, so while you're sleeping, Ivana, I'm on the road. I'm in a different city doing workshops. So these workshops are either for, let's say, children or teenagers, and have something to do with also social media, but also privacy, how to use social media in a safe environment and in a safe space. Also has a lot to do with ethics. Or it's also workshops for small businesses or individuals, how to go about it, how to use it, and what's the best way to put yourself out there. And the other part is also, as being an NLP master coach, I do a lot of coaching one-on-one, which can be either a mix of personal and business, or just personal and business. And when a lot of people ask me, oh, you work with teenagers, how do they listen to you when you speak about social media and internet? I tell them it's, one way it's relatability, and the other way is stories. So I listen to them a lot. I listen to them a lot online. I listen how they communicate, how they converse with stories, and I actually use this in a way to get closer to them. So in a way, in the basic way, storytelling is great because it conveys emotion, it tells you what triggers people, it makes you relatable, and it's a great connection tool.
Oh, that's awesome. So let's just dig in just a little bit. What is it that you think that people need to know about global networking?
Mm-hmm. That's a very interesting question and a very interesting point, because a lot of times there are people who learn about social media or learn about the digital environment, and they have this urge or necessity to say, I need a website, I need to be on Facebook, or I need to be here and there and everywhere. And for me, the biggest shift that I can help people create or make is to invite them to take a step back and say, it's really important to get to know the media you want to be on, the channel you want to be on, but most of all, just be curious about how big this connected world is, and how many different people and communities and connections there are. They can be personal or they can be business related, but it's in a way the first step is to be curious and say, I want to learn about, I don't know, Facebook. I want to learn about Instagram, and I just want to learn and get the vibe and the sense of it. And when you come with the intention of being curious, and when you enter, with this ability to open your mind and just be present and active and learn from other people, this is actually the first very important step of getting into that global space that then can really expand exponentially, let's say. The more you invest, the more you actually put yourself out there. And there are more and more situations when people say, okay, hello, Mr. XYZ. Okay, I know somebody who works in the same area or in the same field. Maybe you two should connect. And so the connections go forward. And I find this amazing. It's I think that this is the opportunity that before this connectedness, that this fast-paced connectedness existed, we didn't have.
That's absolutely true. So talk a little bit about how you got started, because I know folks really, really struggle, and I'm not going to lie, right? Even though I have an international background, it's still a little scary to connect. I don't know. It can be scary to connect globally. So talk a little bit about how does someone who may be feeling rather insulated, how could they make that first step to connect with people from different countries? How did you do it?
Yeah, that's true. And also, because we've chatted before this chat, I remember that we were, kind of describing our experiences. And there is, for me, there was, let's say, one first distinction. I am not a native English speaker. So for me, it was also kind of a cultural shift. Even though I'm chatty, I'm an introvert, I like being among people. For me also, Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and even LinkedIn, when you start connecting, over the borders of your country or your existing network, it is a different, maybe quite unknown world. So for me, I always say Twitter was kind of a revelation in a way, because on Twitter, you can really take time and observe how people do it. And you have a lot of Twitter chats, you have a lot of communities, you have a lot of people who are active there, and they're also really willing to connect, to share their experience. And there are amazing people who, when you tweet them, they will tweet you back. Or when you ask them a question, they will say, sure, no problem. Try here, try there, connect with some other person. And I think that is the hugest benefit that you can get from using this either social media channels or the connections that there are. So for me, my personal story was just yesterday. I joined Twitter in March 2013, and I totally remember why. It was kind of a corporate decision to let's do Twitter now to promote some event. And when I look back, it's really funny in a way that we use Twitter, but it's all a learning curve. So I can now see how long I've come and how much it's also changed during the years. But for me, it was. I broke my ankle, and from one day to another, I was bedridden for a very, very long time. And in that moment, I felt like my whole world collapsed, because I hadn't broken the ankle first time, but it was the second time. So yay for the luck I have. And I said, I had this feeling, oh, wow, the world outside is moving, everything is happening, and I'm here because, of course, I had to be at home. And Twitter and social media were actually really my window into the world. And I have to tell you that at that time I was jumping on live streams, I was jumping on Twitter chats, and yes, in the beginning it was really difficult for me because you have to say hi, I'm new here, I come from there and there, I do this, but then you realize that people are really sensitive, people are really welcoming, and when you make an effort, when you're kind, and when you start with kindness and with a positive attitude, it is really a game changer. It was I really started enjoying it, and it became kind of my weekly and daily practice, and I just kept going from there.
That's so fascinating. So I was asking the folks the question, and the chat is just going up and up. So I was asking folks the question, what percentage of their audience is global? So I actually don't think that mine is as global as I would like it to be. But what about you? Is it, I mean, I would imagine just because the United States is so big, we have, you know what I'm saying? Depends on where you are in location. Have you found that there is a specific mix to have, or any advice that you would give to folks about what kind of ratio or mix to have of a global audience?
I would say it depends, because I have a mixture of personal and business. So the one thing that I've learned through connecting and collaborating is Madeline Sklar says it wonderfully, the riches in the niches. Mm-hmm. So when you find your niche, where you find where you want to focus, let's say your business, your energy, your efforts, of course there's a mixture between locally and globally. And also I think that the global outreach also takes time. As with everything, nothing happens in one day. Rome was not built in a day, so there are steps to go there through networking, connections, and through, expanding your reach really strategically, also with business development. But I have to say that some might find this very interesting, but my connections on social media are mostly global, so are mostly international. And it's really funny because I have found that in my area or in my country, there is still a lot of not seeing the benefit of connecting with let's say, higher purpose. So connecting on a human level to see the possibility of collaborations and projects, but it's more on a daily basis. It's more clicked. And it's more also connected to the local politics or the local events, which is okay, which is also a way to use social media. But my wish and my intent is meeting new people, learning new skills, learning new ways of doing something. So I feel comfortable in my big global pond.
So I'm kind of curious, do you track, because like I said, this was not anything that I tracked myself. Now, of course, I don't have a goal or a strategy in place to expand into any particular country, as I know some businesses might. Now, do you track or segment folks by the global region that they're in, or do you segment your conversations differently?
Again, it depends on the personal side and on my business side. So I do them in both ways. So I do segment them, and I do align them also locally or on the region that they're based. So, for example, when I'm reaching out or when I'm building strategic outreach, I do look, for example, what's my first step, what's my second step. because I'd love to, you know, go and visit the US. I'd love to go and grab a coffee with you, Ivana, tomorrow, but you know, there's a distance and time and money that needs to be, you know, when you set a goal and when you say, okay, I want to do in 2019, I'm sure that we can make it. But here is the only disadvantage, that that global is something that's very wonderful, but it's very difficult also to translate it immediately into, you know, in real life connection or grabbing a coffee tomorrow. But personally, I use two approaches. On Twitter, especially, I use Twitter lists because it helps me to keep track of the conversations that we have and also the communities that I help to manage. And second approach is just you know, discovering different hashtags or discovering different communities and kind of tapping into there and discovering either new opportunities or new people or new possible ideas that I say, you know, this sounds interesting, that we could integrate here and there. And a lot of times I also see it in a way, oh, this idea is interesting for my friend that I know there and there, so I have to connect her forwards, and so on.
So one thing that you've done very successfully, and I know Eva, who's our community manager over here that helps on BizapaloozaChat, you guys have really, really leveraged what I would call top of the funnel social media, especially Twitter, to build relationships and get clients. I don't know how much of this you feel comfortable sharing, but I'm assuming you get a lot of your clients through your engagement on social media. Correct?
Yes.
How do you do that? Talk a little bit about how you, I don't want to use the word like, do you say like, I would like to work with that person, and then you build that relationship, or do you have a different strategy? What is it?
I think that here is this business and cultural difference because I know that for the US territory, or let's say for different territories, there are different engagement tactics, and there are different ways how you start a conversation or how you start a relationship. But the fact is, for me, I can say that I have and I'm working on leveraging, you know, all the connections that come my way and all the connections that I establish. Not in a way, I really want to point out that, because a lot of times people think, yeah, you know, if I'm strategic in my conversations, I always see, you know, some hidden agenda behind. So I target people. This one is good for this, for that, and that. So I don't go about it this way, but I love connecting with people who are, for example, doing something very interesting, starting a new project or starting a new collaboration or a new movement. And I'm really curious to learn how they go about it, what's working, what's not. And through connecting in this way, then the possibility arises, and they say, you know, we're looking for a copywriter, or we're looking for a designer, or we're looking for somebody to take over this and this. And it's just, it is funny, but it actually works that, you know, word of mouth travels very fast. And when you put a lot of effort into cheerleading for others and into putting other people first, it comes back. So a lot of times people will say, oh, we're looking for somebody, or could you recommend somebody? And that is also the way that you slowly establish also your client network and your possible future clients.
So what is it that most small business owners or entrepreneurs just don't get about global networking and building those relationships? I'm not really looking for mistakes so much as I'm looking for, you know, what is it that we need to understand differently or maybe do differently? What don't?
Yeah, I love discussing about this question, and I think we could do many hours more. And I like, even how you point out, it's really important not to look at mistakes and also say, oh, you're doing this badly, or oh, this is terrible. But I think it's very important to walk the talk and just kind of empower people and help them to see why something's not working, what's the reason behind, and what kind of needs to be changed. And I would say there, from my experience with clients, or from people who come to me for advice or that we discuss, the first thing is that a lot of times, I think for many small businesses or entrepreneurs or people also who are limited with budget, social media is kind of an add-on. Social media is something, that is it necessary? Do we really need it? Okay, so how much is gonna cost? Is the effort I put into it really, going to bring some results? And they're really, kind of not really willing to not only invest, but not really to spend time, or let's say time and time to manage it. So I always tell them it's, the digitally connected world and social media is like one global unified village. It's not, now only restrained to borders and countries, but when you make an effort and put yourself on the digital map, and when you create a digital outlet for yourself, either it's a website, Facebook page, Twitter profile, LinkedIn group, or whatever it is, you're putting that small dot there. And when you do it in a right way, with the right incentives, there are going to be more and more eyes on you. Not just local eyes, but really global eyes. So it is important in this day of age, because you know it and I know it. When I'm looking for a service and a product, I will not go and shop, next door or to the nearest supermarket, but I will go online and check. And I will check peer-to-peer reviews, I will check communities, I will check all sorts of information I can get. And when you're able to be, in that reviews, or when you're able to be on that digital map, that is something that was not available to us before. And it's something that can be, that can really push you in a way to be present and to, I don't know, set yourself as an expert or as an excellent provider of this and that, or whatever your strategy is and you want to achieve. And connected to this, I would say it's number two, that we are living in the world of really fast pace, of instant gratification, of quick results, of a lot of successful stories. And there is still a perception that, okay, when I put myself out there, I do everything that you told me, and so results, where are they? Weren't they supposed to come in yesterday? Okay, I'm waiting 1 week. And usually, or a lot of times, it takes more than 1 week, also more than 1 month. So it's really necessary to empower them and to let them know, okay, there are different KPIs, there are different strategies that we can, that we can put in action, and results will come, but it takes patience and it takes consistency. It takes consistency every day, 3 times a day, every month, and you just need to be consistent and not give up, or, use techniques like buying followers, or, spending your money in wrong places. And the third one that kind of connects to both 1 and 2 is that for whatever the reason behind we all talk about, relationship building and community, is when you put an effort into there and you say, okay, I want to make connections, I want to see, you know, what the world can offer. When you need I don't know, when you need help or when you have questions, if there is a community or if you have an established network, it's much easier to get help, to get feedback, or to get support that you need. If you don't invest in that, then you don't get anything back.
So is there anything, I don't want to ask you and have you give the same answer, but I'm kind of curious about this. Is there anything that you have learned or seen or wish that somebody had told you? You know, because you said, if I knew that, it's the if I knew then what I know now question.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There are so many things, like you were saying, people want immediate results. People want, you know, there are those things, but then there are, I don't know, little things that you could only learn by diving in yourself. What's been an epiphany for you that, like, if somebody said, what should I do to do well? What is like one thing that you haven't mentioned yet that somebody had told you, or that was like a big epiphany for you?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was what I have mentioned, but if somebody had mentioned before, I would definitely spend, when I embarked on my social media journey, I would definitely spend more time listening, learning about the platforms, you know, okay, the basic functionalities, how they work, who hangs out there, what are the tools that I can use. Yes, tools are very important, even though I know a lot of sentiment is against automation, against tools, but sometimes we need to learn the basics, sometimes we need to learn the hard work and the tools. Because then a lot of things can be done smarter. We can target better. We can segment better. We are not just a broadcasting tool, but we can actually spend more time being human and doing what marketing, and I'm not using the word marketing as a science approach, but as marketers, so being connectors, knowing a lot about market, knowing a lot about people, a lot about our customer, and just leading conversations.
So I got to talk about Twitter. I was looking up some stats, and Facebook continues to blow it out of the water in terms of popularity. And there's been so much, you know, oh, Twitter is dying, Twitter this, Twitter that. And yet I've been on Twitter since the very, very beginning, like 2007. So DIY Marketers is my second account. And I guess what I want to say is, I just, to me, when it comes to connecting with people globally, and a few folks have mentioned it here in the chat, I love Twitter. It's not as intrusive, because to me, Facebook is a very personal space.
Yeah.
Even on my Facebook page per se, I mean, not my personal page, but on like a fan page or a branded page, it's still, you have to hop a wall.
Yeah.
As in Twitter, there like is no wall. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Why do you think, I mean, and just remember when they had that Arab Spring and they had the whole thing with stuff going on live, and Twitter was like all the rage. And I mean, I can't imagine my life without Twitter.
Me neither.
I don't know if we're just singing to the choir, but like, if you were to step out of your preference for Twitter, what is it that, where do you think it's going? I mean, how do you make global connections on Facebook? It just seems more difficult to me to get people that way. I don't know. Why do you think that Twitter is, I don't want to say failing. It's not failing for me. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
It's, I mean, you've mentioned even some very interesting points. Let's face it, Facebook was the first social media network that we all encountered when we started using social, or when social media became actually a thing. And it has the biggest user base. So that is a fact that I think will continue to grow. But I see, you know, the discrepancy between Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, that there still is a necessity, you know, not to take every platform just as a platform per se. So yeah, I'm just doing just Twitter, and I'm just doing LinkedIn, or I'm just doing Facebook, or whatever you're doing. But you know, the real masters, or the people who are really rocking it, are finding the really good balance between, you know, connecting across the platforms. So for me, let's say, personally, what I've learned and what works really well for me is, I make first connections, because Twitter is really good for one-on-one access. So whoever is on Twitter, you can tweet at them, or you can meet them in a tweet chat or at an event, even virtual event, and you can start connections. And once, you know, you establish the connection and you get to know each other, then after a while, it is kind of, you know, the process of taking the relationship further, either to Facebook, or then connect on LinkedIn, or on other media. And that is basically that term that we hear a lot of times, so across platform connections. So for me, I find it really useful, let's say, on Facebook. Closed Facebook groups or closed Facebook communities are great. I mean, you can meet like-minded people, you can converse on the same topic, you can learn about same topics, and that, for me, are really the great hubs of people, of connections, of learning, and that's why I enjoy Facebook. I enjoy it with this reason. But as you mentioned, Facebook for me is still a very private channel. So in the beginning, there were a lot of just not private, but my personal things there. So in a way, you kind of need to make a distinction from a private profile than to a business profile, because, you know, it's I'm quite sure that your family and friends are not always keen to get the information that is intended for your customer or your target audience, or just the business world. And the same is, I need to mention with LinkedIn, which I enjoyed very much in the early beginnings, but once it started to become more and more, you know, Facebook-like-ish, with a lot of things that were not really business-related. And I'm not saying I don't mind the family picture or something, but you know, in the core of itself is to connect on the business level and exchange business insights, something that can support my growth, your development, your business development. I find it less attractive, and I also a lot of times find it less effective for a lot of businesses.
That is so true. And I have to tell you, you know how you know things or you do things and then someone says it and you're like, oh my God, this is like the smartest thing I've heard ever. And that is your point about leveraging platforms. And one of the things that I think people get confused on is that there is this idea of focusing, like you don't need to be on 100 different platforms, right? And at the same time, I love this strategy of, yes, use Twitter for its strength. Get out there, meet people, make that connection. And then something that I know everyone missed, you said, after a while.
Yeah.
After a while, where you've engaged with someone. So like, I knew you off of Twitter, but I would not connect with you on Facebook. I don't feel like I knew you that well. But now, now I feel like, yeah, I want to connect with you. I want to get to know you better. I want to build this relationship, right? And get to know you at a different level, right? So after a while, you make a Facebook connection. And then I can see you're telling me on Facebook, hey, you should check out this group. Or I can say, hey, check out this group. Yeah. Now you're building that. So I just want to, it may not seem like a big deal to you, and maybe other folks are doing it. I'm doing it, but I wasn't doing it like in that strategic way that you just talked about. So that is really powerful. I would want to like reiterate that. The second thing that you talked about, and I went back and forth on this, like I was on LinkedIn from the very beginning and it was good and I was using it as a database, but then I sort of got off of it because it was lots of spam and the groups became spam and all of this stuff became garbage. Then
Yeah.
when they changed it to more of a Facebook format, I was like, oh, I like this. Now there's more of this engagement. But then you have people who aren't doing this leveraging platforms thing. Personal stuff and fun stuff, Facebook.
Yeah.
Business stuff, LinkedIn. Right? So, you know, if you want to share a business quote, share it on LinkedIn. You can share it on Facebook, but it needs to have a little special flavor. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Or do you have some like specific advice that maybe you tell your clients or people, you know, some of our listeners who maybe want to leverage platforms better and connect on a worldwide level? I mean, we're going to be talking about culture and what you can say to introduce yourself to people and so on and so forth. But how would you do that leveraging internationally and from platform to platform?
Yeah, you just mentioned something very important. A lot of people think, especially because we were coming from Twitter and because we're simulcasting, we're here and we're on Twitter. A lot of people will tell you, I just don't get Twitter, you know, Twitter is just, you know, 140 characters. I don't know if I can do it, you know, I don't know what to do there, and so on and so on. And a lot of times they felt more comfortable either on Facebook because it was more personal, it was personal engagement, or just their private lives. And LinkedIn was supposed to be more business oriented. So let's say just more really business related texts or articles or research or whatever it was. I think in a way then the line became a bit blurry. For example, now a lot of times when I work with a lot of solopreneurs who kind of just are, you know, getting the grasp of social media, or just, you know, are trying to understand how this works. For some, it's really, you know, it's really easy to just leverage a simple strategy and say, it's okay, you know, just separate it into different slots or days and say, okay, one day is just totally business oriented, and one day that has more like a personal note. It's okay to share something personal, but understand the context behind it. Understand the context behind your content. Because you really need to think how your audience thinks and how your audience is going to respond when they're going to see something. So if you share something that has no whatsoever connection to whatever you're doing, whatever your audience is looking for, or whatever your audience is interested in, they will have no clue. And it will really, you know, turn out like, what the hell are you doing? What is this? We don't get it. We don't understand it. So it's really important to, a lot of people will say, okay, you know, do your buyer personas, or, you know, really hone in on your audience. But a lot of is because we're talking about global connections now. It's really, really important to separate either something is really global. So you're using a global hashtag, you're using a global event, or you're just, you know, connecting on a global level. So content marketing, social media strategy, how to get more followers, how to get more success. So these are basically very, let's say, global topics or ideas. But if something is really specific or really local, then really be mindful of, you know, leveraging it really locally. Because this is, you know, the number one miss, or something that we miss a lot of times. And then we don't know, wow, why doesn't it work? Oh, why this failed? It was because of the context and the narrative behind it we totally missed.
Well, this is the perfect segue, because right now the conversation over on Twitter is we're talking about connecting and language, right? And I know that I love Jim Katzman said other nationalities speak the same social media language. A showstopper is when people only use their native tongues. And I'm like, well, that puts me into showstopper range, because I primarily tweet or share in English. I share in Serbo-Croatian too, but I don't share in German or Italian or in other language where I don't feel comfortable. And so question number one is, has English become the default language of social media? And if you don't speak English, you can't connect to people?
I think I was just zooming over the chat, and Gigi Peterkin, I hope I didn't use her name incorrectly, said one very important thing. That you will learn once you go into social media is that English language is overall present. So in a way, it's kind of a necessary to know, let's say the basics if you're talking about global connections. But more, if you look at the different industries, or if you look at specific areas, there is a lot of, slang or idioms that you really need to get the hang of, because sometimes for a foreigner or for a non-native speaker, it's very difficult to see, the line between is something funny, is something not funny, is something hurtful, is something, can something be misunderstood in a way, or, I always say, no matter whom I'm speaking to, words matter. So when you're a non-native speaker, nobody will say, "Ooh, your wording sucks," or "you're really bad at English," except when you're doing a website, or when you're doing flyers, or when you're doing brochures. Of course, you need somebody who does that professionally and professionally proofreads it. So that yes, that is something that is needed. But when you are connecting, on a personal or business level on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, just be mindful. If you're not a non-native speaker, I often say, "Oh, sorry, my Slovene English. Oh, sorry, I hope this is not going to be misunderstood." There are really soft skills that you can use to avoid any misunderstanding, or maybe coming off too harsh, or saying something wrong or something incorrectly. I think that with a kind approach, you can get along with people just fine.
That's one thing I've noticed. Your tweets are amazing. And even as you were talking about English and idioms, I heard you use several of them. How did you learn to speak English and to share social media posts so effectively?
Thank you so much. I have been blessed from home. Both of my parents are polyglots. I grew up in a home where, for me, it was something natural that my parents spoke 5 or even 6 languages. They're really language aficionados, and I was blessed to get this, curiosity about languages, and I was also blessed with our Slovene educational system. That includes learning 1 or 2 or now even 3 foreign languages already in primary school. So I was really keen to learn. I think that languages were one of my favorite subjects in school, and I actually really worked hard on this. I made several certificates also, and I was also very blessed in a way that I worked in corporations where English was the official language of the corporation or communication. So you kind of get the hang of it. And when you do it daily and on a daily basis, it kind of becomes your communication language.
That's absolutely fascinating, because I've always, like I said, I can really appreciate having learned English as a second language. I can really, and my parents still struggle. I mean, they speak fluent English, but there are still little things that even after almost 50 years, we're like, what? You just never know. So,
Yeah.
all right. So what would you tell people are like the top 5 things they should concentrate on, 3 to 5, whatever, give a list of whatever you think that if they do want to expand their global networking, what are some tips that you would share? Let's say for me, because I don't know what my ratio is. I had asked that. I want to say it's I'm focusing on the language, right? So like, my goodness, like almost 100% is all English. I am biased towards primarily people to write back and forth in English.
Yeah.
Okay. I would like to expand my network. I probably am at maybe 20 to 40% global. I would like to increase that. I would love to have a nice mix. So what are some tips you would share with me?
Thank you for asking, and I think this is a really good use case we can use because a lot of times people. Just recently, I saw somebody on Twitter asking, I'm from the US. I will be traveling to, I think it was somewhere in Europe. I don't remember now. And it's going to be next year. So I was thinking about connecting or expanding there, and I thought, wow, that's an amazing opportunity. Basically, it's really important to plan and start doing in advance. A lot of times when you're trying to penetrate into either a new market or I don't know, a new segment or a new country, especially Twitter with advanced search and how you can discover either communities or business-related things is really good for finding either specific hashtags or specific communities that gather just on a territory or just around people in that and that area or that country. So that's a good way, to go and introduce yourself and, to check out, okay, who are the people there, what are they doing, how we can connect, and what are the possibilities of connecting and maybe possibly collaborating in the future. And as you mentioned, Ivana, a lot of times, yes, of course, I mean, English can be an advantage or a disadvantage, but I think that nowadays, when a lot of people are collaborating across the globe, and for example, you have somebody who helps you in the US, somebody in Europe, some in Africa, some from all over parts of the world. I mean, a lot of projects or a lot of expansion can be done like that. So, for example, you can have a person that is, that is based locally and can help you something there with local translations and local business development there. But there, it's easy for them to communicate with you in the States, and also you can offer some insights and work from your side. So always good to have, the bigger strategy and picture and say, okay, this is not the world that we used to live in, where we went to the same office and where we were born in the same country and we worked in the same country. But now our projects or our work can be scattered around the globe with the resources and skills that we can offer.
So I have to ask, as we start wrapping up, I got to ask you, are there some countries that are, what should I ask, easier to work with or to network with than others? Or if you could categorize some different folks as to their networking styles, what would you say? So like Americans are blank. Europeans are blank.
Yeah, it's a lot of times people will say, and I know I don't see that as a stereotype, but I can tell you what I learned from, let's say, connecting or collaborating with people in the US, is that they are very accessible. very easy to start a conversation with, but the rules of engagement, let's say, or the rules of business are much different than what I was used to, or the rules that apply in Europe, for example. It goes from the request for quote, the payment details, the whole process of or workflow there is, and also the communication style that there is. You kind of need to get used to it, and a lot of times, for example, with the US or maybe with people that are not in Europe, I would say in Europe, it's a lot of the communication is a lot of back and forth, following up a lot more. While I can tell you from my experience is that in Slovenia or in Europe, we were used to, we agreed on the project, maybe the updates were once per week or whenever needed, and the payment was at the end, for example. But I think that connections, and the more you collaborate globally, the more you learn of these specifics, and the more you get the hang of it. Even though Americans can be more accessible, it does not translate into, yeah, it's no problem, getting, expanding a business there or getting, just any work you want. That doesn't translate like that, but a lot of times it gives you a more clear picture of what people are looking for, and a lot of times they're more open about it. While with maybe with other cultures, it's also a dance you need to learn the basics of. It's like I will always, because we come from a very similar territory. I remember, for example. It's just an anecdote that I remember, but it translates really well into the digital world also. I remember, Slovenes are really, you go to a meeting, you have meeting minutes, it's tuck, 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 tuck. When you're finished, okay, you have a coffee and then you go. And then, for example, we traveled to either Serbia or any other nation. And it was not like this, we came with the expectation, yeah, it's like tuck, 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 tuck. But people there wanted, to chat more, wanted to be more relaxed, and, the same principles that we were used to, we had to align, we had to, give the space to them, to get the beneficial, either personal or business experience. And I think that is, I can tell from the stories that my clients in coaching tell me, it's like when you're able to have that bendable mindset and that bendable ability to learn about other people, to give them space to for them to show themselves how they are, how they operate, and how they wish to do business. I think that is the key to success, that works much better than anything else.
Well, I can't think of ending on any better words of advice. Zala, thank you so much for being here. It's just so great to have you.
Thank you, Ivana. I had an amazing chat. I can't believe it's an hour with you, and I'm just blown away also with the chatter on Twitter. And I can tell you, it is you. You've built an amazing, you together with Eva have built an amazing community of Bizapalooza chatters.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Thank you. So there you have it, another Monday Bizapalooza chat where you got to plug in and learn all about global networking. Join us again on Thursdays, 8 p.m. Eastern. That's probably a little late for you, Zala. But we plug and talk about much bigger issues. It's very, very casual. It's like a cocktail party. So join us then next Monday on Bizapalooza Chat. We're going to be talking about influence face-to-face. So very, very cool. There's influencer marketing days coming up in New York City. So we're going to have one of the founders for that there to talk to us about that. Join us again. Zala, thank you very much.
Thank you.